I've never met a salesperson who tapped out on ability before emotional wherewithal. If you just aimlessly throw activity at the wall, like you're just choosing to fail. Like that is the act of failing as a seller in a lot of ways. People believe in abilities, they pay you for outcomes. Month number 10 breaks even. Month number 11, so much profit covers all of the experiment accumulatively. Never went down after that, every month more and more, right? Month 11 is what you want.
Welcome again to another episode of Revenue Mechanics, where we dive under the hood of revenue engines and explore what's working in the market today with revenue leaders. And today I have with me Kellen Casebeer from the Deal Lab, who coincidentally also works with Alex, who we had on the show recently as well. Kellen, welcome along.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Good to have you here, man. Now, normally for most guests, we kind of skip past the whole life story aspect and get into what they're doing now. But after talking with you, obviously, just then pre-show and looking into your background, you actually do have quite an interesting journey of how you got into sales, because you've been in sales almost pretty much as long as I've been out of school, and we're the same age, which means you pretty much got into sales very early. So how did you start off in the sales world?
Yep. Yeah. So the beginning for me was when I was 5 years old. Asked my father, "What is a job where you make a lot of money?" Right? Because in my head, it's like you work to make money, so you might as well do the one that makes the most or whatever. And so my dad goes, Kellen, there's one job in the world where you choose how much you make. And just like as soon as he said that, I was whatever he's about to say is what I'll do.
Yeah.
And he's like, as a salesperson, like the harder you work, the better you are at the job, the more money you can make, and you are the tip of the spear, so you get to kind of go out and define what that looks like for yourself. Just since he said that, I was like, cool, that's what I'm going to do. And so fast forward about literally a decade, and I left high school my freshman year. I started working full time. I started working part time initially, going to school part time. Eventually transitioned working full time. I came from like trade background, so I was doing like low
Yep.
voltage electrical. Came up through that, started my own business for a little bit. Left that when I graduated university. Right, went to San Francisco State and got into cybersecurity sales and sort of like off to the races. And so I arrived as like a entry level SDR in a company with like 7 years work of experience, 7 years of work experience, about 5 of those selling, and the advantage of being wanting to be a seller, right, as a guy in an SDR job.
Which is quite a bit different from a lot of people that land in the sales world, including myself. Like I never had envisioned in my mind that I would be in sales. Back in when I was in school, I was the kid that hid behind curtains in plays and never wanted to talk to people. Uh, so a lot of people fall into sales, whereas obviously you seem to have had that vision from the get-go. How do you think that's possibly helped you with your sales career? Because it's littered with a lot of success throughout that. How's that vision and that clarity helped you progress with your sales career to where it is today?
Yeah, I think it's sorry, let me get a little glare. I think so. This belief I have is that I've never met a salesperson who tapped out on ability before emotional wherewithal, is the way I put it.
Mm,
Right. And what I mean by that is I think sales is like it's an emotional challenge as much as it is like a technical or anything else. And so to me, by having desire to be in sales, like I have always approached this as like this just is what I'm going to do. I am going to make this happen.
yeah.
It has never been a consideration that anything else, literally anything else, was ever acceptable in any sort of way. It was like this. And so I've been in situations where, you know, I've tended to be someone who people will believe in, to be honest. Like, but I've been in situations where like it was only me who believed I still had a future doing my first SDR job. As an example, my leader at one point said, "Whatever you decide to do after sales, you'll be great at." Right. And she knew that I'd like wanted to be in sales my whole career. This is my first job out of college. And my director is telling me like basically like, "Hey, go kick rocks, go do something else." Right. And I was just sitting there going like, "Tracy, you will never be right. I will not let that be true." But as someone who's coached a lot of people, been around a lot of like, early career reps, I know that is something that's difficult for a lot of people to sort of overcome, is sort of like that
Mm.
early career turbulence and kind of sticking with it, having vision that like, maybe I can do this. And so I
Yeah.
think that's the way it's helped.
And especially in the sales world, like obviously as you said, there is a lot of early stage churn where people come in and come out because it does have some lucrative aspects of once you're good at it. You can definitely, obviously, as your dad said, you can control your own income, you can be at the tip of the spear and really drive organizations forward. But the early stages of sales suck for a lot of people. And I know with Deal Lab now, and obviously some of the work you're doing with coaching and supporting some of those early stage reps, what are you seeing that's not only causing them to quit, but what are you guys doing that's helping them excel and succeed in the space?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a few parts, right? So the way I think there's like demand side and supply side, right?
Mm,
So supply side is like my business or being a rep, and then there's issues on the demand side, what people expect, right? So I think, and I'll hit the demand side first because I think it's talked about less. So I think the demand side, it's like the demand for success in sales is I want you to come in. There's often a lot of presumption around how easy it'll be for success to happen. Oftentimes, sort of like balls dropped around enablement in like clear, obvious ways. And then I think the timeline of expectation, how quickly, how great things go, is it like everyone, everyone wants everything right now, tenfold. You know what I mean? Which is understandable. It's like very anything,
yep.
but a lot of times companies just hey, how do
Mm,
you have that expectation for these reps if you can't supply the equivalent on the supply side, right, from their perspective? And so I just think in how that manifests is sort of like high expectations with wishful thinking, right? So let's say I've never tested outbound before, and I'm like, I want to do outbound. I know a competitor does outbound, so I'm going to hire 3 reps so we can do the same, right? And then you go hire these people, they quit their other job, they change their lives to come work for you,
mm,
right? And you're like, all right, why don't you do outbound? They're like, well, we don't, maybe they don't have the tech stack right, and so then they kind of spin that up, right? Now they have this strewn together tech stack, start making the calls, doing the emails, whatever it is. And like if they don't get the results right away, a lot of times it's they'll fire them, they'll go hire someone else to kind of do that like same thing. And the way I put it is they buy the first 3 months of outbound over and over and over again because really they're expecting the world really quickly, right? And I think
mm,
it's much more realistic to look at it like you need to build like successful outbound motion. One is so valuable that there's no reason to expect like a junior seller is going to walk in 2 months and just hand deliver that to you.
yep.
Like, it's great. Um, and so I think it's a little bit more about, well, hold on. And so then on the supply side, I think it's like around having a system. You know what I mean? Like I used to sell like a consulting offer where we were building an outbound sales team. I was like a fractional head of sales type thing,
Yep.
and I run an SDR community. So I see like hundreds of people come through this and some of these like early stage issues type stuff. And I think a lot of times there is this face value idea of like we work with these people and we do these things for them, and then they kind of just are like, all right, go do that. That's what it's like for me. That's what onboarding was basically.
Yep.
And so what happens is it's like if you don't have like this is exactly how to build the list. This is how to think about these things. If you don't kind of build successful reps, but you just hire people and expect them to be successful reps, yeah, I think that's tough. So on the supply side, it's a little bit of like whether it's the companies that should be giving that or not. It's like if you're kind of just aimlessly throwing activity at a wall, it's like that's just not going to work. And
Yep.
so it's like no matter what your company does for you, if you just aimlessly throw activity at the wall, like you're just choosing to fail. Like that is action of failing as a seller in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think it's both of those. You know what I mean? I'm a big fan of like deifying the truth, being super direct, and kind of like instead of having too much of that back and forth of like the face value versus underlying thing, just be like, no, put all the cards on the table. This is and what that might look like is like, hey, you have no outbound motion right now. I do not want to be judged on my 60-day ability to get you 10x ROI on investment.
Mm,
And it might be creating more realistic expectations, like a 6-month pilot where by the end of it, we just want to know that we, then start measuring opportunity generation or something like that.
yeah. And I think that's one of the big reasons why reps get crushed early in their career is unfortunately landing at companies like that. And I found myself in a company like that as well at one stage where I'd had some success in sales in a particular vertical, then got bought into this. So they were, I guess you could call them like startup, like 5 mil ARR sort of level, which there was founder led sales through their networks, their friends, etc., to get to that stage. But they had no sales motion. And at that stage in my career, I'd never done any real like outbound processes, systems, etc. Because the companies I have been at had different like paid advertising and other lead gen methodologies. And when I went into that company, they promised like, oh, we'll have so many leads, so many opportunities for you. So it kind of suited what I thought I was. And then when I got there, it wasn't that. They were like, all right, we need you to go outbound. And I'm like, well, I don't know. I don't have any processes or systems. Like, it's not my background. Do you have some playbooks I can follow? No, but
Yeah.
can you figure it out? And then 90 days later, when there wasn't like the traction and it wasn't necessarily showing, like, we're closing like a couple of deals a month, but nothing
Yep.
gangbusters. They were like, oh, we were expecting more. And I was like, well, I came in with nothing. Like, what do you expect
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
generate? And then from the rep side, obviously, now I know warning signs to look out for and know how it could be possibly a right fit. Is one of the things I share with more junior reps. I do a little bit of like just off the cuff mentoring, not like a pace, off the cuff. People ask for help. Is you could put on one of the best soccer players in all time. If you put him in a Sunday league kickabout team and played him against Real Madrid, sure, he's the best player in the world, but he's still like he's not going to score any goals because his teammates and the system he's in is not
Yep.
conducive with him performing. But you then take him and put him back into Real Madrid back in his heyday, and all of a sudden he's a superstar again. Now,
Yep.
was it him or was it the team and the system? And if you're a rep that's in a better, well-oiled, structured system, then obviously you're going to be able to maximize and fulfill your potential. Versus, and there are reps that are obviously super talented that can come in and make a wave and a difference, but their potential is going to be limited based on the system that they're
Yep.
within. So, how are you supporting reps, companies, not only get these systems in place, but have an effective outbound motion through Deal Lab?
Yeah. So when I was doing the consulting work prior to the Deal Lab, when I worked at this other business, we were building these like outbound sales projects where it was like build a tech stack and a process and hire someone and train them and sit on top of his fractional leader.
Yep.
What I saw was like 2/3 of the time, let's call it, it would go just like great face value, take this market, tell them we do this, you do the outreach, you get the meetings, close the deals, everyone's happy. And about a third of the time, it would be what I call like an uphill pipeline environment where you could take that market, tell them what you do, and it's going to be like crickets, right? And so in that situation, and that's a very interesting situation for me as like a student of the sales game, because and you just made the same point, which is you can do, you could divide a company's market perfectly, like very well, and you could write incredible copy, and you could do multi-touch sequence, you could multi-thread, you could do every single thing. And
Mhm.
there's just tons of companies that are not going to succeed and are going to fail. And it's not the seller's fault, but they still will measure you against sales targets, right? And even like the VC world, right? And which is, it's, some people are like haters and stuff, but like most of the companies fail, right? So a VC makes 100 investments, like 3 of them pay for all of them, right? And so what
Yeah.
it means is when you are in a company, you are a 3 in 100 chance of being in a winning environment. 90% of the time they're going to fail to zero, and they still need to invest in talent as if they're the winner though. And
Mhm.
that's what the situation is. And so if you're the rep in this environment, they need to pay you like you're in the winner. They need to measure you like you're the winner. They need to reprimand you like you're the winner if you're not hitting numbers that they
Mhm.
expect if you were the winner,
Yeah.
right? And so it's sort of like VC inherently is expediting outcomes. Sometimes it's sprinting at zero. You know what I mean? And that's what I think is very hard as a rep to wrap your head around. And it's, again, like I was in environment, and not to say like, I'm not perfect, especially as a rep, you know what I mean? So it's not like I was like, oh my God, I was so great and it was all the company, because that's lame as hell too. Like you can't
Yeah.
blame this stuff either. You need to show up, you need to develop. But I was in environments where I was like, I know that I am better than like what these numbers, and honestly, like I had management that treated me that way and stuff too. Like I knew like there's, I've been in environments where I'm like, I have ability, but that's different than outcomes. People believe in abilities; they pay you for outcomes,
Yeah.
right? And I want to get paid. Like it's like I'm trying to be, it's like, believe in me all you want, but like that doesn't pay the mortgage, right? I live in
Yeah.
California; it's expensive here. And that's where I think there's like this interesting balance of like you do want to chase the right environment. What I tell people is, if you want to get into sales and you got your dream job, like kiss it goodbye. You're never going to retain it early on in your career. So I think all you should be centric on is developing, and you can develop in an awful environment, you can develop in a great environment, you can also not develop in an awful environment, and you cannot develop in a great environment. And so
Mhm.
I think it's like people who chase, to me, sales is not about ease, right? So if you want the easy high paying job, like you become the thing that's like able to, it's kind of like, what's the demand for you then?
Yeah.
Everyone wants an easy, high paying job. Right. And so I think there's this like interesting kind of balance, and sales is an interesting career because like, so for me, I left higher paying, nicer jobs to chase more entrepreneurial early stage things to develop certain skill sets, right? And
Mm,
like that is what good looked like to me. And that's exciting to me, right? To chase a certain thing. There's other people that are like, you're an idiot for not spending, any moment you don't work for like a category leader in an in trend industry with an asymmetrical comp plan with the right rep view ratings, like you're an idiot, and some people think that
yeah.
way. And I think it's cool because I think it's all true. Like it's all, it's kind of like we all have it's to me it's like self-expression,
Yeah.
So anyway, I
It's
think I
kind
got
of
a little bit
like
off track.
what Alex Hormozy talks about of being are you in a season of earning or a season of learning?
Yeah.
And depending on your aspirations and how high you want to go, and obviously you had a lot of drive to want to start a business as well, um, rather than cashing in on where you were at and having your season of earning, you prioritize the season of learning because you recognize there are more skills that I need to get me to the long term of where I want to go.
Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck, not just in sales, but this is life in general. Like whether it's getting into forex trading or drop shipping, they try all these lot of gimmicks to make money or try and get rich because they're trying to shortcut the path to the top
Yeah.
and not go through the sacrifice and the journey that's required to become a person that's of value to earn that in the marketplace. Now, when you were going through that period of maybe earning a little bit less than your maximum potential at that point, and you had people saying, "Hey, you should be doing this and doing that," etc. What kept you focused on your north star of where am I going, what skills do I need, and kept you going through that?
Yeah, good question. There's a couple of like jumps I made, right? The first one was, so, there's some catalysts that are like natural for people. 2020, I left a corporate sales job to go to an early stage risky job. You know why? Because COVID happened, I was cooped up, I was bored, right? And I was basically in an environment where my company was very stable, there was no job risk, and no one was performing. And I hated it. It drove me nuts. It sucked. It was just like, and not no one was performing. Again, that's cope. Like I wasn't performing, and a lot of people were not performing. And in the moment, I felt more. So an opportunity came up to basically go to this early stage company, and it was going to be lowering my base pay, eliminating my variable almost entirely, in except for a couple of like potential bonuses on outcomes that weren't, in retrospect would not have ever happened probably. Not never, but like, just they weren't really things I should have been thinking about.
Yeah.
And the reason I did it was because I knew I had chased like I tried to like advance my sales career, and I kind of found myself, I'm like, oh, I'm like making some good money, this is kind of cool. And I was kind of just like complacent, and I don't know, I'm a pretty intense person, so like I was almost like disgusted at myself. I was like,
Yeah.
dude, you're like just sitting here doing nothing. And I just felt, and I was, you're like this aspirational guy, and you're in this job, and you're just, like, why, like, what are you doing? And so
Mm,
I left. I took a big pay cut. It was super scary. I made it work for a bit. Like, really, that's it. It's the thing I'll say is like a lot of my best moves have been things that, let me back up and anchor to something. A lot of times early in your sales career, when you're trying to make more money, people don't realize they're not trying to make more money. They're actually just super nearsighted because,
mm,
like, let's say you're an SDR. Let's say, and I made 50K as an SDR, right? As an SDR, let's say you can make 50K, and then let's say on the top end, let's say you can make 120K, right?
mm,
Now, a lot of SDRs could hear this and be like, that is so much more.
yeah.
Now let's go to like a director tier title, right? Or whatever thing you aspire to be, even an AE, like 70K swing for an AE. It's like a lot of money. Like it's not, but it's not, that's on like the low end of what normal can be if someone can just like chill out and like defer a few freaking years to
Mm,
get to like be like mid-market AE or something. You know what I mean? And so I think what happens is people transactionally try to optimize these minuscule opportunities. No offense to anyone who's anything, but just like if someone's really trying to, if someone has these big dreams like I did and doesn't know where like those things can kind of lead to, it's just like being less of a rush. Try to be a
yeah.
potent, valuable weapon. It is way cooler to be like way too, too good for what you're doing and be like overpowered. I chase things where I'm like, oh, someone give me a shot, someone give me a shot. And it ends up you can sell that and then you won't be the asymmetrical top performer and you'll just be kind of like dwindling along. So I think taking these steps back, being uncomfortable, being willing to be like where, and so the way I saw it is I need to become someone who's known for being potently valuable, right? So someone will give you the wage. Like if you get a job, they'll pay you to be valuable. And then over time, you find out if you are,
Yeah,
right? And so instead of getting an opportunity to find out you're not the thing, I was like, I'll take things that underpay me and I'll just way over deliver. And in fact, that's become like a pocket to hang out in where it's like, great, like understated, over deliver. Everyone's always excited about that. And I think, yeah, I don't know. Did that answer? Hopefully that answered the question. But I
yeah,
think that's like, that's basically that's the way I would think about it. Because if you're going to end up like for me, if you're going to become a VP of sales eventually, you're going to risk a ton in terms of job turn. If you're going to become an
mm,
entrepreneur, you're going to have like this period of uncertainty. And so I think you really got to, a lot of the things people think they're trying to like run from and hide from early in their career, it's like you're just going to keep finding it. And
yeah,
the advancement is not hiding from it, but being okay and tolerant and accepting of some of these discomforts.
100%. I can relate a lot to that, especially in my early sales career, or as I matured through my sales career and got to like my peak earning level as a sales rep, which I was fortunate in at a time to I had my first like $1 million commission year and was hitting 100K months. But it wasn't through my sheer skills or anything miraculous. It was just right timing, good company, good offer. Everything just kind of aligned, and then I just capitalized on that and went with it.
Yeah.
And then after that, because I always had an aspiration to run a business as well, and I left that company and left that role and career to go and start my first business. I had capital saved, I had investments. I was like, if I'm going to do this, I might as well freaking do it now. And it bombed. I started building out similar like a system to Kajabi in a sense, but it was more specific to like the fitness wellness industry.
Cool.
Um, Spent months building it, and then I brought on a business partner. And long story short, like he like forcefully took over the company and used some legal loopholes. Or not a fun time. Cost me a couple hundred grand, and yeah, it was not good. And when I was in that period, everyone was saying to me, "Just get back into sales, man. Get yourself back going and stuff." And I was like, "Well, I don't want to just be a seller for the rest. I want to develop some more skill sets, and one of those was in marketing. So rather than go back to sales, where I probably wouldn't like, not probably, I definitely wouldn't have found an opportunity that was as good as what I had in terms of the 100K months and stuff, but would have probably still been able to take home 2, 3, 400K. I went into the marketing world because I wanted to work on my skills in there and took a 70K base plus some little bonuses and stuff to maybe make up to 90 because I knew how impactful marketing was on my success in sales when I was in it. So I wanted to understand how those dots connected and understand it properly. So I took that sacrifice to go and for 3 years worked behind the scenes in marketing, earned a lot less than I was used to, but at the same time developed skills and everything that's been able to make the company I run now possible because I
Yeah.
understand the connection between the two. So that sacrifice for the long term, I think, is something a lot of sellers kind of need to have inside them, especially if they're going to, last the distance and go the mile. But then in finding the right companies to kind of do that with as well, as your advice to sales reps or companies as well, what are some of the key attributes, one from a seller that they should look for in companies when whether they're new or just early in their career, and then on the flip side for the companies, what should they be demonstrating to attract that talent?
Yeah. I'm a big fan of the word like, right. And so what I believe is a lot of times so I created like an online product once on like how to become an SDR, like how to get an SDR job. Right.
Yep.
And it's really funny because I got to see what happens when people try to present as like hireable person.
Yep.
Right. Which is like it's easier to convince someone you are than actually be that. Right. And so I think like it's tough because it's like this is the type of thing I would have ignored when I was like early in my career in a lot of ways. But I just think you just can't be in a rush and you don't want to oversell yourself. And I think it's like, to me, the best outcome for both parties. It's like cards on the table, just like selling, this is good selling. It's like cards on the table, extreme transparency,
Mm,
highlight what could go wrong. Don't lean too overly into what could go right. You know what I mean? And I think that's like a lot of times, like the company is kind of going like, oh, here's all the, here's a comp that you might be able to hit that no one's ever hit. Here's a this and a this, right? And then you'll have like a rep who's like, trying to make up how good they're going to be or how quick they're going to be, how good. And I think it's like way better for everyone to de-stress the environment, slow down as much as we can, especially in the early parts, and just be like, find an environment, so if I'm a rep early on, own where you are in your journey, be incredibly open with it. You should never work for someone who isn't excited to hire you for who you are.
Mm.
Right. And so like I tell people, like, be a very extreme version of your, I'm not like a boxed in square like person. Like I there would be certain environments that are probably awesome, successful companies where I'm not culturally the right thing. And that's okay. That doesn't make me feel worse about myself or about them. It just
Yeah.
is. Right. And on the flip side of that, the people where I am correctly aligned to, it's like very potently so, because it's, outside of just the average of everything. And so I think for reps, it's like own who you are, and that's not only like from a professional lens, but just like as a human being, what are you looking for? What do you want out of it? And I think same for the companies, where it's like, just understand you're not going to trick someone. You're not going to trick a good person into working for you. Like if you have a bunch of like messed up back end stuff, like you're not going to be able to like hide that, hire someone and parlay that into like crushing it.
Yeah.
There's these like inevitabilities of these situations a little bit, and it's like you can either openly reconcile it up front together, or you can let it become what it becomes. And I think the more open, clear upfront, the better it's going to go.
Yeah, and I think one of the challenges I seeing like have seen from within companies, like obviously working within companies, and then just observed in the general landscape, and have a few friends who are in the recruiting space as well, is oftentimes companies will hire before they're ready, in a sense that they don't have systems, they don't have the tech stack, they don't have things in place. And as you alluded to before, they're just like, we want to do outbound now. Let's go hire 3 reps. And then there's nothing for them to follow, and they're just kind of shooting in the dark, hoping they find things. How, when a company is at a point where they've recognized, okay, we need to add another string to our bow and start, whether it's going outbound or introducing founder-led marketing or anything from there to increase deal flow to then recruit reps into, where are some of the starting points that they should begin putting systems in place before hiring reps, and when do they know they're ready to hire reps?
Yeah. So I think to me, budget really matters here. And like, it's funny because like sellers think of budget as like, what can I get? Right. But I think I think the more realistic lens is like, what is a company's like, so like, to me, it's like, what is the company's resource pool? And one of the resources companies have is their own time, and then they have money. And the balance between those two things equals what someone should do.
Yeah.
Right. There's times that I meet someone and like, yep, we do 20 million EBITDA off inbound funnels and partners. I work 1 day a week. I'm not telling that guy to go build his own list. It's like, hey man, give me $5,000 a month. I'm going to run campaigns for you. I'm going to tell you how it goes. You're hardly going to hear, but that's okay for him because that's the right thing, right?
Mm.
The flip side, you can have a founder who's like, I'm about to raise my seed round. I have no money, and that person is
Yeah.
like, look, you can't afford anything, dude. Like, you just need to go hit some LinkedIn DMs or something. And so I think it's really dependent on that. What I would say is that on a macro level, I think most companies don't divide their market enough upfront. So no matter what way of bringing, it's like when someone comes inbound, or when you get this opportunity, how you would categorize that. Most companies I see are just like, it's an opportunity. Like it's just a lead, like a lead's a lead. It's an
Yeah.
and I think the more granular you have things, then the better. Then I would just think through like how, in these different pockets of your market, like how would you best, uh, where do these people naturally exist? And then I would just simply try to like tell them the message, and I like wouldn't overcomplicate it up front,
Mm.
because I call it like, so for me, I tend to be doing outbound campaigns, and I'll call our first campaigns oftentimes Occam's razor campaigns, because it's sort of like the best place to start from is like just square one. Like,
Yeah.
who are you going to reach out to? What are you going to do from start that? Maybe it's going to work, maybe it's not, but it's like the right thing to anchor to that.
Mm.
So sometimes it's like a company is going, oh, we want to hire salespeople. It's like, how many messages to your market have you sent? We haven't. Okay, so you don't even know if this is going to be easy or hard. Like, for all there's people who will do the work for $1,000 a month if you have an awesome process that works,
Mm.
right? If you have no process, you might need to get the me's of the world or the whoever to come do something. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, so I know that's a little like indirect, but I would just say, the more, if you have an abundance of money and you want to spend things, I would just go hire really good people who have playbooks, and like don't mess with it yourself, because if the time is scarce, you're going to waste a ton of it not being able to like replicate it. But if you don't have the money to spend on something and you do have to sort of hack it together, I would just very simply define markets very specifically. I would define personas in those markets. I would define specific angles. run 20 at a time. Like 20 of these people message A, 20 of these people message B, and just start to build some momentum around that. And once
progress.
no worries. And then once we start to like see any sort of, it's sort of like people start to pick up stuff qualitatively,
Yeah.
but I would go do something where like you're pulling on like an intentional thread rather than just like moon, be like, oh, we haven't done anything, I'm just going to go throw a bunch of stuff at the wall. It's kind of like most people, if you are not the person in this situation to solve it, you also maybe shouldn't come up with like, the prioritization. It's like, go get some
Yeah.
partners to help think through this in your specific instance.
Yeah, 100%. And that's kind of, as you alluded to there, of knowing who you need and how to hire. Because if you can't do it yourself and you don't have a playbook, then you need someone like you that's got the experience, has the playbooks, and also can set realistic expectations. But at the same time, that comes with more cost because you have those playbooks versus going and getting a junior rep, someone that's never been in sales before, paying them 50K a year or 40K a year or whatever as an entry salary because, oh, well, I want someone full time on this and I want them to work at it. And they toil away for months just trying to figure something out. And I often see it in paid advertising. Like our main focus is paid ads. And a lot of companies start paid ads way too early when they haven't found message to market fit. They're just kind of praying and hoping that if they start running ads, they're going to get sales and get leads and that sort of stuff. And don't get me wrong, like obviously you can do that, but if you want to be more effective and not go through the trial and error process, then establish yourself first, establish the market message fit, then pour the gasoline on and amplify it. It's similar, I guess, not take the wrong step at the wrong time and get the wrong infrastructure in place or the wrong hiring in place. So for companies or founders that are in that space of, okay, we've got some stuff working. Actually, I'll use that company I was at, for example, where they brought me in and they had nothing in place and I didn't have any playbooks at that time. What should they have done instead, and where should they have started in terms of not only getting those playbooks together, but what do those early stage playbooks look like for an outbound motion?
Totally. Just plug myself here. No, so this is basic. So like when I used to work in consulting, the way I saw it was like people were over investing in the whole project when really they just need to figure out this very granular, can we build pipeline? Like as a consultant, they'd like spin up this big thing. So to me, before you go and make all these investments, it's like you need to first segment your market. So take the company, take the TAM or whatever you want to call it. It doesn't have to be whatever, but like generally understand high level what like primary level industries do we work with, and then secondary of that, like what are the kind of like sub divisions of those primary things.
Yeah.
And the reason that's useful is if you're like, okay, I work with software companies, like most bad outreach is just like software companies and does outreach. So if you go, I grab PLG companies, that level of specificity further is just going to greatly amplify like what you can say to them. More granular segmentation means more proprietary understanding, more specificity, more potent messages, higher win rates. So the very first part is just like granular segmentation. Then I think it's mapping out experiments to run, right? So a lot of people just start kind of like doing things, and it's sort of like perennial open for debate mono strategy where there's not like divisions of we're going to do this and this, but it's just like, yeah, we're kind of constantly slogging and changing things and like, oh, maybe we should change this and this. And then you don't have data. Like you have numbers, but you don't have like, we did 1,000 of this and got this, 1,000 of this, got this. It's just like mumbo jumbo. So I think mapping out, so for me, it's like market level segments of the markets, personas of the segments of the markets, and then pains or angles to each persona, to each segment of each market. And that creates this big matrix that is combinations of a specific angle to a specific persona of a specific segment of a specific market that we'll control for when we write a campaign. And so then what we'll do is we'll map the markets out. We'll take the things that we think are, you could pretty much stack rank in order what you think is most likely to work. And then you start running them, right? And so then you run those campaigns and basically you either like kind of arbitrarily circle it, like, oh, this is kind of interesting, let's maybe iterate on this and keep pulling on this, or you cross it off if it sucks, right? So if you get bad replies or you get nothing, and it becomes clear, right? And so everyone's always excited about, how do I get 20 meetings a month? Who knows, right? But what you definitely should do is just like segment the market, start testing these things, and you'll find relativity. And to me, that's the thing that like VC doesn't really incentivize this because they want things so quick. But like company A might have it might be some companies are getting 20% reply rates, 50% positive replies, and they like don't have to personalize anything and it just rips. Like that has nothing to do with you if you're out there and you're sending 1,000 messages and getting one reply.
Yep.
And instead of being like, what's 20? Who cares what 20 looks like? Find one that works. And so I think it's like, to me, it's that. It's like, if you want to go test these things. And so that's like the divide the world side. Now you can post content through that lens. You can make cold calls through that lens. You can send emails through that lens, LinkedIn DMs, paid ads through that lens. You could do webinars. You could do events. You could do gift. So the point is like, if you map the world out that way, it's just as simple as getting a message, getting this angle to in front of that persona. And I would just pick one of them, whichever one you like. I like email because you control for logical argument, right? Like it's text, not conversational, the scalability of it. Um, but like, so I think email will give you a more sort of like, I think email helps map out what people care about more. Phones will get a higher positive outcome rate. And
Yeah.
so what that means, in my opinion, is use email to learn about the market, use phone to harvest those lessons, always do both eventually. But like if you're going 0 to 1, just choose one or LinkedIn.
Yeah. And I think that's where a lot of the time the debates come in for in our world, in the revenue world of outbound's dead, SEO's dead, paid advertising sucks. So everyone's got some sort of thing of something's dead or dying. But as you kind of alluded to there, like they all come together as a matrix of your go-to-market motion or an ecosystem, as I call it, whether you're going outbound and even if the outbound isn't producing, say, 20 meetings a month, as you said, we're using it to learn. And Adam, who connected us, talks about the cataloging of the market, using that to collect the qualitative insights to inform some of your other actions. And I think that's where one of the challenges, whether it's marketing or sales, get bucketed into is this direct ROI attribution of we sent X amount of emails and we only returned 3 meetings. What the
Yep.
hell? Our reps suck, and we spent all this money on reps, etc. How do you guide founders through that mindset of one, setting long-term timeframes, but also understanding like it's not just about the meeting?
Yep. I love this question. So I tell people is I give them an Alex Hormozy story, right? Alex Hormozy talks about building his outbound sales team. So he says, so his wife's his business partner, right? So he goes to his wife, we're going to do this outbound thing. She's like, okay. They fund it for a quarter, no sales. She's like, Alex, shut this down. He's like, no, I'm going to keep running it. Runs it for another quarter, maybe gets a couple sales, loses money. She's like, dude, turn this off. Stop. And he's like, no, I think it can work. Runs it another 3. So we're 9 months in, right? Losing money. And she's like, literally, like, actually, what are you doing? Month number 10 breaks even. Month number 11, so much profit covers all of the experiment accumulatively.
Mm,
Never went down after that, every month more and more, right? Month 11 is what you want, right? So when someone judges me on month 2, I'm like, okay, oh, you didn't get enough. Like, that's fine. And I get it. I'm empathetic. I probably sound kind of like a jerk here, but like, I get it. It's a real amount of money. When someone's giving me a wage to do a service, you're like, okay, I understand why people are antsy. But again, it's like if you started at 0 and we took the market that you thought you worked with and we said 4 different ways the things that you think they love about you and you got crickets, if you look at me and say I'm the thing that sucks here, you're like,
mm,
I accept that. My outcome sucked, sure. But really, I think that's cope for the fact that like you have market misalignment. I can help you manage and operate a feedback loop with a wealth of knowledge on what it looks like to actually be resonant with these people. And if that's not an interesting seat at your table, like, yeah, you should fire us because we're not going to bring any value. You know what I mean? And
yep.
genuinely, and this is where like sellers, I get as a business owner a little different than I used to. It's like they don't always need the situation. Sometimes someone's just like, yeah, outbound, don't care, not worth it. And like I'm not mad at that. I appreciate it. If someone has a business that's, what I tell people is like, if you have no revenue channels, you need to do something. And so I can't guarantee positive outcomes, but like you're dying until you do something. Now, if you do have something that's working, then eventually you probably want to de-risk that. And again, we can R&D that, but we cannot guarantee that you're going to like flip a switch and like double your revenue because you're doing outbound on top of the thing you've been doing for a decade
Yeah.
in
Uh,
4 months.
I love this topic, especially from the marketing side as well, because one, that Hormozy story is great in terms of the attributable side as well. But what's also sometimes missed is all that activity, those connection points, those conversations that are happening, not only might obviously eventually produce direct attributable ROI. But you might also notice that, hey, our Google searches are up. We're getting more inbound inquiries starting to come through. Our paid ads are actually performing better as well, just through the sheer contact that people are now starting to have interactions with your brand and going, who are these people? And go Google. So the whole engine as a whole lifts because you're just being present and entering the market. And I was having a conversation with one of my clients yesterday who we're about 3 months in, and he was stressing a little bit on the ROAS. And I hate ROAS as a metric just because it take into account any of the ecosystem effect. And a lot of the campaigns that we're running are more driven towards building affinity with the audience. So I took him back to January, and this is in the fitness industry. So the fitness industry, obviously, January is typically the hottest time of the year. New year, new me. I'm going to get on the fitness train. So that's when sales numbers are generally the highest, volume of ACV is generally the highest. Everyone wants to sign up. And we compared August to January in terms of the raw revenue metrics. We actually have it written down here somewhere. There was the same level of net new business. So, same volume of customers came in, a bit higher last month than January, which is a big win. The conversion rate on the meetings that were scheduled was 91% in comparison to 64% in January. So, we earned more revenue, had higher closing rates. So, we spent less time with time wasters. We're
Yep.
getting better retention and better overall ACV on those customers coming through as well. More Google searches, more inbound traffic, and we're getting direct leads coming through paid as well. Like, man, everything here looks net positive to me. He wasn't looking at it through that lens because he was just looking at, we spent this on ads. Our spreadsheet says this much came through back from ads. But when you look at the overall revenue numbers, everything was trending up quite
Yep.
significantly. And I think that's the side where people miss, especially as you said, with business owners. You can be empathetic about it because I get it. Like now being a business owner as well, you see money going out and you're like, oh, is this giving me an ROI? Is this worth the investment, et cetera, et cetera? But you've got to do something to go to
Well,
the next
and
level.
one of the things I've seen too is like when like if you were to just take like if the only information you had is you have two clients, one client you've observed hire and fire multiple vendors for the same service over 9 months.
Mm,
The other vendor hired someone, the first month went terribly, but they decided to commit to it and they stuck together 9 months.
mm,
Month 10, who does better? You know what I mean? It's like
yeah.
just that. Like it's just and to me, you can see behaviorally, like when you have clients that are real squirrely, real early, and you're like, there's no way things effectively happen inside of your business. Like this is not going to work. And you can just tell because
Mm,
it's like if you're make a move, hyper scrutinize it. It's just like that's not how this stuff works. And I think I don't know. It's just it is in I appreciate very much align a lot of this like kind of anti attribution stuff. It's when I was an early stage rep, it's like one of the number one things I understood was like, I know I'm working hard. I know I'm like contributing in a positive way. And I know that it's not necessarily netting out the way that it should. And I knew that there was like this mismatch between like, that doesn't mean that I actually shouldn't stop a lot of these behaviors.
mm,
And then sometimes you have people being rewarded for behaviors that are like more of gamifications
yeah.
of things than actual like value creation. And yeah, I don't know. It's just
Um,
interesting.
yeah, and a lot of it incentivizes almost the wrong behavior as well in terms of that short term mindset. Like if we relate it back to reps and SDRs and founders as well, when you're in that space of, and one of the things that I'm not a huge fan of when it comes to the sales world is like monthly revenue targets. We need to hit this month.
Yeah.
And like I get the logic behind it in terms of like, hey, we've got to put a number up there to aspire to, etc. But as you said, there's like you could be doing all the right activities and deals just aren't ready to pop through at that point. Obviously, when you get your pipeline built up strong enough, you'll just tick those numbers over just through sheer volume of opportunities. But a lot of the time, it incentivizes reps and companies to do, we'll say, less than genuine behavior or
Yep.
deceptive behavior with clients and prospects just to hit those numbers because like, hey, we've got this deal on last day, this is your last chance, get this discount, blah
Yeah.
blah blah. How is that a challenge that you come across when speaking with companies and helping them integrate this? But then do you try and fix that or navigate that, or do you just say we're not a right fit if if they're not in that alignment.
Yeah, I think here I ask it again, slightly different, a little bit in like a one sentence version. I want to make sure I get the right idea on it.
Yep. So if KPIs are, say, out of alignment with
Yeah.
rep success and buyer success as well, like by having a good buyer experience,
Yep.
do you work to get that in alignment with the company, or do you chalk it up to, hey, we're probably not a right fit. If you're looking for this to succeed in the next 6 weeks, we're not a good fit.
Use that latter language a lot. For me, like I honestly, one of the things I often will tell people, like if we're looking at doing a pilot of Outbound and haven't done it before, like, you shouldn't give me any money if zero results isn't an acceptable outcome. And they'll be
Yeah.
like, what? And I'll be like, I don't think I'm going to do worse than people. I'll probably, and I've never had someone get zero results through the whole thing actually, but like the idea is like I can't, I didn't choose what your business does, didn't choose what the market is. I'll help build a bridge, run a feedback loop, we'll figure it out together. But like I'm not going to upfront promise an outcome for your business, and so I just tell them, like, if you believe in this methodology I described, if you like the way I interact with you, if you've seen some of my stuff, like if you want to do these things, happy to do them. We'll work our ass off together to make it be fruitful. But if you're looking for someone to take ownership of the risk of this, I'm not going to do that, because I know that like the reputation in the space, the reputation damage of sort of overpromise, underdeliver,
Mm,
way worse than just not getting a deal.
yeah.
So I'd rather take no business and have a, keep my reputation than like, so for me, it's about, and to your point, the pacing of closing deals is so different as a business owner, because it's like I have no urgency behind forcing anything, and I'm very cautious to take on the right things because of like the hit it takes to what my life will be afterwards, and because of that I think you get a little bit better, you get more clear on what like good business looks like, and I think it's an advantage. I think it's tough for reps because the incentive structure is just so strong to just force certain outcomes.
Mm,
It really does, not to use kind of like a cheesy word, but dehumanizes it. It's like the concern is not the prospect, it's not the seller, even your boss. And this is what I think sellers don't understand, is your boss that's being a jerk to you, they're under the same pressure. Their boss, the founder, they're under the same pressure. It's like there's a board somewhere that doesn't know any of you. You're not a person, you are a series of numbers. You might even be a department of numbers.
yeah.
And so it's just interesting, because it's like yeah, I don't know, just that.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and I think something that one I knew internally as a rep, because like I always tried to maintain relationships with my client or the people I signed, and if they weren't having a good experience, they'd come to me about it. But now being a business owner as well, I say to any prospect basically the same as you. Like if you're expecting guaranteed results from this, like we're not a right fit, because all I can do is amplify your message to the market. If your message sucks, and if it does suck straight away, I'll just tell you that, hey, fix this first before we work together. But if your message doesn't resonate, then like that's not something I can control. It's, as you say, I can build the bridge, or in my case, the megaphone.
Yep.
But if people are closing their ears to it, it doesn't work. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter what I do. So
Yeah. Shout louder.
yeah, tell it to more people. It's going to make
Yeah.
a difference. So I always say that I've got a 7-month-old son, and I say, if you cause me more headaches than he does, then
Yeah.
we're not going to work together.
Yeah. 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 Amazing. I have a 2-year-old son. He turned 2 in July.
Congratulations, man.
Yeah. Likewise.
It's a
Likewise.
journey, parenthood, especially
Yeah.
teaching me around patience, which
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
definitely
Yeah.
something in sales that you need. And we are running short on time, and I know your day is starting to wrap up as well. Um, as a parting thought for you and Deal Lab, what does the next 6-12 months look like in the company?
Yeah, yeah. I think so we've been growing, which is super cool. Very fun, unique experience. To grow a business. So I think like 6 to 12 months. Hopefully, I'm a little bit less involved in delivery side, right? Not that I intend to ever really be fully out, but probably more of like an editor in chief type position to like running cold email campaigns versus like strategist, right? So I think build out the team a little bit more. My goal, like I aspire to build a company, right? Like I think that's there's a lot of freelancers as an example. I don't think it's worse, but like I'm trying to build a business, so it's a certain thing. um I think for me it's just about I'm most excited about like kind of like exemplifying what I think good outbound is, right? And so
Mm,
to me it's sort of like continuing to be like a loud voice about kind of what we're talking about, which is why this is awesome.
yeah,
um Sharing how cool of the things you can actually run are, to continue like to maintain optimism, right? Not just be like, oh, this is how bad it can be, but also like, and this is how cool it can be. And I think just keep doing that. Like, I want to build a company. I love what I do. Like, I'm a practitioner, so like, I'm not trying to like hyperscale. Like, for me, it's just like, I want to do cool commando-esque, sick outbound and growth plays.
Yeah,
Yeah,
man.
maybe go punch up market a little bit more. Maybe I'll start doing some stuff with some bigger and bigger companies and start getting in some unique situations like that. But we'll
That's
see.
music to my ears, man. It sounds like obviously we're playing different fields, but very much the same aspirations. Like that's pretty much the same path I see myself on over the next 6 to 12 months,
Yeah,
just
yeah,
in my vertical. Yeah, so it's been really great to chat, man. For anyone that wants to follow that journey, where are the best places to find you and follow along?
yeah. I'd say LinkedIn. LinkedIn's definitely the best. At some point here, YouTube's gonna happen. At some point here, maybe a newsletter, but like those don't exist right now. So I just say LinkedIn's the best place for the day to day. Hit me
Yep.
up, say what's up. Always happy to
Yeah,
connect with you.
awesome. Well, it sounds like we're at quite similar stages. I've just started the YouTube game, obviously, with this being a part of that. So in 6 to 12 months' time, we'll see how big that gets. And would be good to do this again at some stage, maybe even in reverse once your channel's up and
Oh yeah,
going. But mate, good to have you on, good to connect, and it's been a pleasure chatting with a like-minded individual.
yeah. Likewise, Sam. This is a lot of fun. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Kellen.